ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Prices shift, petrol jumps, shares fall. A company cuts jobs and suddenly the business story is everyone's story.
I'm Alan Kohler.
And I'm Carrington Clark. From Monday to Thursday on ABC Business Daily, we break down the biggest stories in business, finance and the economy and why they matter.
Then on Fridays, I'll go deeper on That's Business, with the people making decisions, taking risks and shaping where the economy goes next.
Find it all in the ABC Business Daily feed on ABC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
It was the first face-to-face meeting since the war in Iran began, now almost 6 months ago. So, did Benjamin Netanyahu try to convince Donald Trump to continue the conflict? Today, Barbara Slavin, a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Centre, and what the meeting means for the war. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Barbara, Donald Trump, I think we know by now that he loves the optics of an Oval Office meeting with a world leader. But this time, when he met Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and then, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, it was without the press cameras in the room. So why?
I think there are different reasons in each case. With Zelensky, I think they had a serious conversation, perhaps about trying diplomacy again with Russia, this time with Ukraine in a somewhat better position than it has been in some time. With Netanyahu, there are a lot of misgivings about the war with Iran and concerns about a divergence of views between the United States and Israel about that war. I think Trump did not want to expose even further some of those differences. If Trump had invited reporters into the Oval Office, there just would have been more embarrassing questions about the status of the war with Iran and how poorly it's gone.
Well, Barbara, I do want to concentrate with you on the meeting between Trump and Netanyahu. Now, this was the first face-to-face meeting since the Iran war began, and it was during the last meeting, which was back in February, on February the 11th, that from subsequent reporting, Benjamin Netanyahu convinced Donald Trump to start the conflict. Just remind me about that.
Well, look, I don't want to put all the blame on Netanyahu because we have to remember that Trump agreed to join the Israeli campaign against the Iranian nuclear program a year ago. So this was the second time around. But I think it's very clear that Trump misread events in Iran, that he was too gullible and too willing to listen to Netanyahu's arguments. I just wrote a piece for Stimson Centre. One of the things that really puzzles me, I mean, Trump is not a very introspective man, as we know, but he was a young man when the Iran hostage crisis happened in 1979, when Iran took 52 Americans and held diplomats hostage for 444 days. Trump also was a draft evader during the Vietnam War. And both these experiences should have shown him that there are fiercely independent countries in the world that will not bow down to external powers, no matter how hard you punish them. Vietnam was one of them, and I think it's very clear that Iran is another. It does not take to bullying.
And 6 months, almost 6 months into this war, this rather close relationship that Donald Trump had with Benjamin Netanyahu, that has clearly been strained. Even before this meeting that took place in the Oval Office, Donald Trump was interviewed on Fox and Friends, and he did, Barbara, seem annoyed with the visiting Israeli leader.
There are reports now that Netanyahu is going to talk to you about ongoing excavation at Pickaxe Mountain. How will we respond?
Well, I don't need Bibi to tell me that. Bibi's telling me that because he wants me to stay involved. But no, I heard Bibi announce that. I said, why don't you just tell it to me? Why do you have to announce it to the world? I know exactly what's going on at Pickaxe. It's not a big problem.
Netanyahu wanted this meeting, and from reports he wanted it because he wants to argue that the war should go on. What do you think of that?
Well, of course he wants the war to go on. I mean, he doesn't have a concept for Israel living in peace in the region. That's very clear to me now. He seems to think that Israel's survival depends on it constantly fighting. Again, it's puzzling to me. This is a small country with a small population, a good part of which doesn't even want to fight in the military, some of the ultra-Orthodox. How does he think Israeli society can go on like this in perpetuity? Perhaps he thinks he has a blank check from the United States, but I don't think that's going to continue. Trump wants the Israelis to withdraw from Lebanon and give the Lebanese government a chance to assert sovereignty over the whole country.
Without the United States, there would be no Israel. Without me, there would be no Israel, because no other president was willing to do what I did. I've had a great relationship with Bibi, but now Bibi has to be more responsible with respect to Lebanon.
The Israelis keep blowing things up in southern Lebanon and refusing to withdraw. They've set up some pilot zones where the Lebanese armed forces is supposed to come in and patrol. But even there have been some cases where Israel has continued firing. So Trump is angry about that. I think he's frustrated to some extent by the Gaza situation, which also remains very dire. You know, this board of peace that he set up has barely begun to function, and many Palestinians are still being killed. The Israelis are also behaving very aggressively in the West Bank, and they have occupied a piece of southern Syria. So I think he may feel to some extent that the Israelis have taken advantage of the United States and its support and would like Netanyahu to check some of those impulses.
Okay, so Benjamin Netanyahu, he arrives for this meeting at the White House. Apparently, he slips through a side door, and when it's all over, Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, she simply said on X that both meetings, the meeting with Netanyahu and Zelensky, were positive and productive. I mean, do we know at all what may have gone on behind closed doors?
Well, I assume we'll find out because it will leak. You know, these things always leak, although obviously they're making an effort for it not to leak. You mentioned this business about Pickaxe Mountain. It was Trump himself who raised that the other week when the U.S. was bombarding Iran again. And he said, we were going to hit this site very, very hard. So I don't know why anyone should blame Netanyahu for raising it. There are reports that Iran has put some centrifuges in this site. But apparently they're buried so deeply that even, the U.S. bombers cannot really, do much. Maybe they can close the entrances, but they can't destroy the site. So I'm not quite sure why that is being raised. And the U.S. is not sending commandos in to deal with any of these nuclear sites. I think Trump wants out. Look, the price of oil touched $100 a barrel again last week. The Pentagon is busily trying to obfuscate the casualties, and hundreds of Americans have been wounded. The Iranians have shown a capacity to hit U.S. bases throughout the region, not just across the Persian Gulf, but as far away as Jordan. People are really angry in this country about the war. The latest polls show something like 67-70% want the war to end now, this minute, and they don't really care how.
Well, Barbara, why don't we consider then whether or not Trump can actually get out of this war? Now, his priority is to make sure the Strait of Hormuz is open, right?
Yeah.
But is that actually possible at this point?
Yeah, it is. If you read the memorandum of understanding that was signed by Trump in Versailles, wonderful symbolism there. It says that Iran is supposed to manage the transit down the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days. And then the U.S. reneged on that by opening a separate channel that was hugging the Omani coast. So why don't we go back to the MOU and let the Iranians control the traffic for 60 days? Perhaps they can be convinced to set up some new mechanism with the Omanis. There have been talks in recent days between the Omanis and Iranians about this. Let them manage it. Pay a small facilitation fee for ships to pass through. Now, some may say you're rewarding the Iranians for this, but they have the benefit of geography, and the United States is not in a position to reopen the strait by force. We saw over the last couple of weeks, the strikes resumed. The U.S. pounded southern Iran and the coast along the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf, and it did absolutely no good. Sometimes you just have to admit that you got it wrong.
So you think there's no point whatsoever of Trump further escalating this war? As you say, that recent bombing didn't really achieve anything.
No, I don't think there is. I think he's tried it and he's seen the result. The other thing is that Iran was promised some of its frozen assets. There's $6 billion that's been sitting in a bank in Qatar, and Iran has never gotten it. Sweeten the deal. I think you can definitely accomplish more if you go back to this memorandum. That said, there are some extremely hawkish individuals in Iran now that seem to be keen to continue the war. And that's quite frightening, that by eliminating the supreme leader of the country and essentially delivering the power to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the U.S. has actually strengthened the most aggressive and hardline factions in the country.
Well, Barbara, this all comes at a crucial time for Donald Trump, of course, who's hurtling towards the midterms, and for the Israeli leader because an election is due there in October. So what happens next is really crucial to both of them, isn't it? But they both might not want the same thing.
No, it's absolutely crucial, and both of them are, facing a lot of criticism. Now, Netanyahu is an extremely accomplished politician, and Israel has very complicated politics that involve threading together all of these complex coalitions. So, I would never count him out. Trump, on the other hand, is facing almost certain defeat in the midterm elections. He's trying to muck with the system to make it harder for people to vote, and there's a lot of paranoia about efforts that he may make to interfere with elections. But I think people are prepared, and the Democratic base is energized and extremely angry over everything that has happened over the last couple of years since Trump came in for a second time. And so I don't think he's going to be able to prevail. And once there is a change in Congress, his freedom of maneuver is going to be further constricted. He still has to pass budgets, and that includes military budgets. And there are going to be a lot of investigations that particularly the House of Representatives may want to open into his conduct in office, corruption, the conduct of his family, you name it. So he knows, I think, that this is it. And it's a scary time because, it means he may try for some very desperate tactics. But even Trump, I think, finally gets it, that he cannot bludgeon the Iranians into surrendering.
And what about the relationship between the United States and Israel? Netanyahu, he says this is all just about tactical disagreements. But it's more than that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's much more than that. And again, if you look at the polls, more Americans now support the Palestinians than Israel. This is incredible. And this is particularly true among the younger generations. And even in the Republican Party, you're seeing many voices suggesting that the United States has been too supportive of Israel, and a little tough love is needed. We certainly have, of course, the Tucker Carlson wing of the party, but also J.D. Vance, the vice president, has been very critical of Israel and of Netanyahu. And of course, he has presidential ambitions. So I think, Netanyahu has done the relationship a huge disservice. Many Americans believe that he is responsible for genocide, that what Israel has done in Gaza is genocide. And, even American Jews many of them have come to this conclusion and are distancing themselves certainly from the Netanyahu government.
Barbara Slavin is a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Centre in Washington, D.C. This episode was produced by Ilaria Brophy and Louise Mylan. Audio production by Anna John. Our supervising producer is Sydney Peed. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.